I can still recall the collective gasp that echoed through the courtroom the moment the video began playing on the large screen. There she was, Deborah Wilson, though everyone in our neighborhood knew her by the nickname Karen. Her face was twisted in fury as she screamed at my children from our own backyard. The video was incredibly clear, showing her expensive handbag flailing as she angrily pointed a manicured finger at my frightened kids. Her voice rose to that now infamous screech, one that had gone viral online. "Those little brats don't belong in this neighborhood," she yelled, before grabbing a baseball bat from beside our garden shed and smashing our solar lights one by one. As the video continued, I glanced over at her sitting stiffly at the plaintiff's table in a neat blue pantsuit. Her complexion had gone pale, especially when the footage revealed her threatening to call Child Protective Services, simply because she thought our swing set was lowering property values. Her eyes widened in shock. Clearly, this wasn't the outcome she had imagined when she filed a defamation lawsuit against me. The judge, who had appeared mildly interested at first, now looked visibly disgusted as the video played on. When it finally ended, Karen suddenly clutched her chest, dramatically collapsing onto the table and then slumping awkwardly to the floor. Her lawyer knelt beside her, looking mortified, while murmurs filled the courtroom. A court officer checked her vitals and soon she came to, shakily standing up with her immaculate blonde bob now in disarray. "It was edited," she cried, her voice filled with panic. "That's not me, they manipulated the footage." Her eyes darted around the courtroom, desperately seeking someone, anyone, to believe her. The judge struck his gavel 3 times. "Mrs. Wilson, control yourself or you will be removed," he warned sternly. Then came her final mistake. Pointing at me, she shrieked, "This is a setup. He's trying to ruin me because I enforce the rules. Look at him, he's smirking, he's a monster." The judge nodded at the bailiffs, who immediately approached her. "Mrs. Wilson, you are now in contempt of court," he declared, his voice cutting through her frantic protests. This dramatic courtroom scene was the culmination of events that began 6 months earlier, when my family and I moved into Oak Ridge Estates, a picture-perfect suburban community known for its well-kept lawns and notoriously rigid homeowners association. I work as an architectural engineer, and my wife is a pediatrician. We have 2 children, Emma, 8, and Noah, 6. After years of saving, we finally bought a home in a neighborhood with excellent schools. Within our first week, we received a welcome letter from the HOA. It wasn't welcoming at all. It was a 6-page list of potential violations, all signed by none other than the HOA president, Deborah Wilson. I read the document carefully and tried my best to follow the rules. We were strictly following every HOA rule down to the letter, but I clearly hadn't grasped the level of authority Karen believed she held in the neighborhood. The problem started when I built a simple wooden playset in our fenced backyard as a birthday surprise for the kids. I'd reviewed the HOA guidelines carefully, twice, and found no mention of playsets being prohibited, as long as they weren't visible from the street. Ours wasn't. I even used a natural wood stain so it would blend in with the surroundings. The kids were thrilled, spending hours outside swinging and climbing, while my wife and I finally felt settled, sipping coffee on the patio. 3 days later, I found a bright pink notice taped to our front door. It read, "Violation. Unauthorized structure detected. Remove within 48 hours or face daily fines of $100. It was signed in flourish by Deborah Wilson, HOA president, complete with a smiley face sticker, somehow making it even more aggravating. Immediately called the number listed and got Karen herself on the line. I explained calmly, "The playset follows all the rules. It's not visible from the street and there's nothing in the bylaws against it." She let out a smug little laugh. "Well, I can see it from my second-floor window. That makes it visible, and therefore it's a violation. The bylaws prohibit unsightly structures." "It's not unsightly," I replied, "and personal. Visibility from your private window isn't addressed anywhere in the regulations." "I'm the HOA president," she snapped, her tone soaked in self-importance. "I decide what's unsightly. Remove it or face the consequences." From there, things spiraled. For the next 2 months, the harassment escalated. Karen would park her expensive SUV across from our house and snap photos daily. We'd receive constant violation notices, for the grass being slightly too long, a bike on the porch for a few minutes, even the wrong shade of white on our window trim. One afternoon, I watched her measure the distance between our mailbox and the curb with a tape measure. When we refused to take down the playset, her behavior grew more aggressive. She began confronting my children at the bus stop, telling them their father was a rule breaker. She cornered my wife at the grocery store, loudly declaring to fellow shoppers that our hillbilly playground was bringing down the neighborhood. At the monthly HOA meeting, she proposed a new bylaw banning recreational equipment over 4 feet tall, clearly aimed at us. The final straw came on a quiet Saturday morning. I was inside making pancakes when I heard Emma scream from the backyard. I rushed out to find Karen by the playset, garden shears in hand, cutting the rope of one of the swings as my daughter sobbed. Noah was hiding under the slide, terrified. "What are you doing?" I shouted, stepping protectively between her and my children. "You're trespassing." Her face was twisted in rage. "This eyesore is tanking our property values. I've given you enough warnings." She waved the shears dangerously close to my face. "As HOA president, I have the right to remove violations myself." I told my kids to go inside to their mother, never taking my eyes off Karen. "That's absolutely false," I said, my voice low and firm. "You have no legal right to be on our property or to damage our belongings. I'm asking you to leave now before I call the police." That's when she completely snapped, launching into an unhinged rant about people like us ruining the neighborhood. She stormed around our backyard in a frenzy, waving the garden shears and shouting about how she'd spent years upholding the standards of Oak Ridge Estates. Then, to my disbelief, she stomped over to our garden shed, grabbed a baseball bat my son had left nearby, and began smashing our solar lights one after another. "You want to play games?" she screamed, spittle flying from her mouth. "I'll show you what happens to people who break the rules." She swung the bat again, this time smashing a ceramic flower pot on our patio into pieces. All the while, she continued ranting, insulting my parenting, belittling my profession, and even threatening to call Child Protective Services to rescue my kids from what she called an incompetent father. What she didn't know was that I recently installed security cameras around our property after weeks of her ongoing harassment. Every word, every act of destruction, every threat was captured on high-definition video with crystal clear audio. As she raged, I calmly pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "There's someone on my property," I told the dispatcher, my voice as steady as I could keep it. "She's destroying my things and threatening my family. I'm genuinely concerned for my children's safety." The moment Karen heard me mention the police, she froze, the bat still raised mid-swing. For a second, it looked like reason might return to her, but instead she gave one last angry kick to the shattered garden lights, then stormed toward the gate. Just before leaving, she turned and shouted, "This isn't over. The HOA board will foreclose on your house for these violations." The police arrived just minutes later. After hearing our statements and reviewing the footage, their expressions turned grim. "This looks like a clear case of criminal trespass and vandalism," one officer said, "possibly even menacing." They advised me to immediately file for a restraining order and recommended that I submit the footage to the rest of the HOA board. What I didn't expect was how fast the footage would spread. I sent a formal complaint and the video to the 4 other board members. Apparently, one of them leaked it to others. Within a day, the footage was everywhere. The video, titled "Backyard Karen Loses It Over Playset," had racked up over 2 million views across social media within 48 hours. Local news stations were the first to report on it, followed quickly by national outlets. Viewers were appalled as they watched a grown woman vandalizing a family's yard and frightening children over a swing set. The backlash was instant and brutal. Karen's employer, a real estate agency, ironically enough, placed her on administrative leave while they launched an internal investigation. The remaining members of the HOA board quickly called an emergency meeting and voted to suspend Karen from her role as president. In the days that followed, neighbors I barely knew stopped by with cookies, handwritten notes, and their own horror. Stories about Karen's behavior over the years. I kept a low profile throughout, turning down media interviews and politely asking neighbors not to bother Karen's family. "This isn't about revenge," I explained to anyone who asked. "It's about protecting my children and making sure no other family goes through what we did." Karen, however, chose a very different response. As the video spread across the internet, she hired a lawyer and filed a defamation lawsuit against me. She claimed the footage had been maliciously edited to portray her as unstable. Her complaint accused me of cutting out parts that would have shown her being provoked, and said I shared it online with the intent to destroy her reputation. She demanded $500,000 in damages for lost income, emotional distress, and harm to her public image. Which brings us back to that unforgettable day in court. After Karen's dramatic courtroom outburst and subsequent contempt charge, the judge called a short recess. When the hearing resumed, Karen looked a little more composed, though mascara streaks ran down her cheeks from earlier tears. The judge wasted no time. This court finds no evidence whatsoever of video manipulation, he declared. In fact, the plaintiff's own expert witness verified the footage as authentic. He paused for emphasis before continuing. Not only is this lawsuit dismissed with prejudice, but I am also referring Mrs. Wilson to the district attorney's office for possible charges, including perjury, filing a false claim, criminal trespass, vandalism, and issuing threats against a child. He glanced over his glasses directly at Karen. Furthermore, Mrs. Wilson will be responsible for paying all of the defendant's legal fees. Then came the final blow. Court officers, please take the plaintiff into custody. Karen's face went pale as two officers approached with handcuffs. You can't do this, she shrieked, backing away. Do you know who I am? I've been president of this HOA for 7 years. The officers remained calm as they secured her wrists. You're being held in contempt of court, and you're under review for criminal charges. You have the right to remain silent. Karen's screams echoed through the courtroom as they led her away. This isn't fair. It was just a stupid playset. They're ruining my life over a swing set. Later that same day, the district attorney formally announced multiple charges against Karen. If convicted, she faced up to 2 years in prison and over $10,000 in fines. That evening, the HOA board held a neighborhood meeting. In a unanimous vote, they agreed to dissolve the current HOA structure entirely, replacing it with a more transparent, democratic system. The very next day, Karen's husband listed their house for sale. As for me, I stood on my porch that evening, watching Emma and Noah play on the swing set that had somehow become the epicenter of so much chaos. The golden light of the setting sun stretched long shadows across our lawn, and the sound of my children's laughter filled the air. Sometimes, justice arrives in the most unexpected ways.